back to Families in Action here on KHTS, AM 1220, your hometown station. And we're here with our special guests, Dan Broyles and Larry Schallert. And Dan, you've got some information for us that we need to pass along.
Well, there's just interesting research lately that's coming out about how loneliness does affect people and affects their just even overall health. One of the stats I was reading, it said lonely people are more likely to die early. Persistent feelings of loneliness increase risk of death by 26%. And that's not suicide, that's just our effect.
That's huge.
Just
26%.
26%.
I actually believe that. I could see it.
Yep. And so just the impact on that, and as Larry was referring to connection and even faith community, I was reading from the Journal of American Medical Association that said women who never attend some faith service, church service, are 5 times less likely to end their life with suicide versus some that are never connected.
Women that do attend church service or some kind of faith-based.
Right, just the benefit of, I would say, hope, benefit of connection, the benefit of community.
Right.
That really does affect us in many ways.
Problem with depression, though, as we know, it kicks our butts. It makes us lay in bed, and when we don't want to go out there and do that. And there's different kinds of depression you might want to talk about, guys. There's clinical depression, and then there's your normal depression.
Well, yeah, you're an expert in this as well, Dan.
Guys.
So, yeah, I mean, we know that there's lots of different kinds of depression, and there's major depression if you've been depressed, severely for a couple of weeks. You could meet the clinical criteria for major depression, and there's other kinds of depression. We call it persistent depression, and you could have it from birth. It could be, it could be just a biological predisposition. But we also know there's postpartum depression, for instance, where women who are pregnant or recently pregnant, they can get so depressed that they can feel suicidal and even homicidal.
And we see that a lot.
Sure, you see that at the hospital a lot.
Yes,
you have actually a really good program to manage that.
Right.
And there used to be, a serious stigma towards that. And hopefully we're addressing that issue. But as you notice, we all get somewhat depressed. We go through losses. We can be traumatized and have symptoms of depression. Or we can just be, sad because of a breakup. We were talking during the break at how serious a relationship breakup can feel to anyone, but especially people that are young, from 10 to 25. They go and they might have these serious relationships that are breaking up or having problems. And it feels, you can get really depressed, and a lot of students, people will actually take their lives due to the relationship. So we really try to encourage parents and gatekeepers and anyone to take these breakups seriously, and don't say, there's more fish in the sea, or
you're just infatuated.
You're just infatuated.
You don't really love them, right? It's
not really love. That's not really helpful. We want you to listen non-judgmentally and be an ear for that person and notice, ask the questions.
Give them some hope.
Yeah, give them some hope.
Well, Larry, or Dan, either one of you, for our listener who's out there saying, well, okay, but what do you look for? How do you know when you're hearing something that may or may not be depression? What do you look for?
Well, one of the things that's really, really important is don't be afraid to ask about it.
Well, wait a minute. Let me interrupt you. If I start talking about it, isn't that going to cause them to do something? Isn't that the favorite myth?
That is one of probably the top myths on the whole area of suicide. If I bring it up with my kid or someone I know, am I going to plant that thought into their brain? And that's just not true.
Not true.
And I've had so many people who I've asked because they've given little hints, or they say, is life not worth living, or all these type of hints. And I'll just ask them really in gentleness, say, have you ever had thoughts of ending your life because life feels really so overwhelming or so hopeless? And they'll say, thank you for asking. Right. Thank you for noticing, because I said this to 2 or 3 other people and they never ask.
And I'm not going to say always, but lots of times people that are contemplating suicide or carry it out are throwing clues out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They do want people to stop them. They want somebody to step in.
Right. Nobody wants to feel invisible.
Right.
So you really, it's a combination of events for a lot of people in which there's, like Larry was saying, a lot of losses maybe in their life. could be loss of hope with something, loss of a relationship, loss of a job, all these losses. And then you throw on top of the fact that they're depressed, then you throw on top of the fact that nobody notices. And you put that all together, and you really have someone who's vulnerable to even having suicidal thoughts.
And that's perfect to lead into the seniors too, because seniors are they're alone. Their
Right.
kids are moved out and gone on with their lives, and they're dealing with whatever it is. If their spouses aren't there, whatever the deal is, they're kind of invisible.
Right.
Right. Well, I've even seen that with like military, with people that don't feel like the average citizen understands them. And the statistics now is out of the 40,000 in our country who end their life with suicide, 20% of them or 8% of them are from our military.
Right.
A lot of them with the PTSD and a lot of symptoms that they do feel really isolated and alone in what they're facing.
Yeah. Well, these kids, they go into the military, and then, they're out in wherever they go, Afghanistan or whatever, they're carrying a gun, they get out, and what do they got? So it's a pretty scary thought. I deal with kids in rehabs and stuff all the time. It's from 13 up. And when you even talk to an 18 or 19-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 16-year-old, you say to them, what scares you the most? It's growing up. It's especially somebody that's got an issue with stuff. What am I going to do? How am I going to support a family? How am I going to buy a house? How am I going to buy for a car? So there's a lot of fear out there right now, especially in our economical times.
Right. And if they don't feel like they're good enough, one of the things is people get the message somehow or another they're just not good enough to be, they don't meet someone's expectations. Sometimes
Or their own. Yeah.
So we try to make sure, that they address that feeling of not being good enough, because they can get kind of stuck on that thought. They can ruminate, I'm not good enough, and then they lose the confidence that they can be independent. To Dan's point, I think it's really important that we, keep in mind, I just want to amplify on that, or just reinforce that people give off warning signs, and sometimes they'll give you the idea that maybe they want to kill themselves, and we want to ask, because as you say, it's a sense of relief, and that's one of the most important warning signs. If somebody says they want to kill themselves, then that's really important.
Pay attention.
Pay attention.
Yeah, don't discount it.
That's huge.
Or how about this? Get over it. Your life's not that bad.
Right. That's exactly the wrong thing. We want you to assess the situation and listen non-judgmentally and find out if they're feeling hopeless, and find out what's going on, because it'll be a sense of relief, as Dan says, that hey, I gave a lot of warning signs, and we can talk about some of the other ones, but nobody noticed, and you're the first one to ask, and it's a sense of relief. So we want people to not be afraid to ask that question. Are you thinking of taking your life? Are you thinking of contemplating suicide? That sort of thing.
And to remain non-judgmental, and
Right.
don't be shocked,
Exactly.
and let them talk.
Right.
And always take it serious.
Right.
One of the other myths that people have is they're just doing it for attention.
Right.
That's probably another one of the
It's
top
another
myths.
big myth.
And even if that's true, and they don't get what they're looking for, what are they going to do next? How far are they going to take it?
Right.
Right. And I always say it's not that the thought of a suicide is for attention. Actually, what really needs is their pain needs some attention.
Right.
Because in addition to loss, they can have feelings of humiliation and shame, and we know shame, embarrassment, humiliation are extremely difficult feelings to process, especially when you're young. But even when you're not young, those are really difficult things, and people kill themselves because of those feelings, as well as loss and depression and isolation.
Well, you two are talking about things that Cary and I deal with every single day
Sure.
in the behavioral health unit.
Every day.
Sure.
Absolutely.
We run the behavioral health unit, and there's only 3 ways to get in there. Mike?
No, well, you have to be suicidal with a plan. And the reason it says with a plan is because the more specific you are about how you're going to kill yourself, the more likely it is that you'll carry it out. So that's very important for our listeners to understand.
Right.
Suicidal with a plan, or homicidal with a plan, same thing, or gravely disabled, which basically means you can't get through the day without help. And we're sitting in there with people who may say in our hallway, I'm just gonna I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill myself. Well, our staff pays a great deal of attention to that. Just because they're in our unit doesn't mean they're not going to try to do something, although we have safety precautions in place to prevent that. But we do not take that lightly at all.
Nor can we. But I tell you what I do hear all the time. I don't know why I did it. I shouldn't have. I wish I wouldn't have. So it's like you're saying, halfway down, we hear it from people every day saying, wow.
Yeah, I mean, you might get people that have actually made the attempt and somehow or another, luckily, for
Every
whatever
day.
reason,
Every
they
day,
survived.
Every day.
You know, and we consider it a success if we can get them to you somehow or another, one way or the other, and they can get the help they need. And that means somebody noticed what happened, or somebody noticed that, hey, they have a plan. So we're asking people, hey, if somebody says they want to take their life, well, ask them, do you have a plan? Do you have some way you want to do that? And if it's an organized plan, yeah, I'm going to do it today with, and it's going to be today, and they have access to that. I'm going to, I'm thinking about taking, jumping off a bridge or in front of a train, or, I hate to say this, but taking a gun. We know that happens. That happens right here in Santa Clarita. So if they have a plan.
We've had a couple people that stepped in front of a train.
Sure.
We've had people that put guns to their heads. We've had pills. I mean,
Right.
You name it. It happens right here.
Yeah,
For our
and
listener,
this is
it's
very
very
serious
important.
stuff.
It's very important for our listener to understand. If somebody says, I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to do, and you ask them, how are you going to do that? And they tell you, if they say, well, I don't know, but if they tell you, I'm going to jump over a freeway overpass, or I'm going to do whatever, that is very, very important. That means they are really considering it.
Right.
And they're giving you information.
Exactly.
They're actually saying something to you.
And I would say the average person out there is listening going, that sounds so intrusive. Why would I ask? How would they do that? And there's a lot of fears that people have of even talking about this type of thing.
Right.
Like, well, I just want everybody to be happy and get along. But really, when you do ask those type of questions of how would you do this, or how much have you been thinking about it, it really conveys a sense, I care about you.
Right.
And people need that sense of hope through care.
Now, Dan, you brought some information with you that we want to make sure we pass along.
Well, I would say we want to just talk about some of the hotlines and some of the other warning signs. I think that would be really helpful. One of the other warning signs is changes in just their overall behavior, or not motivated to be involved in stuff anymore. If they're isolating, pulling away, they used to enjoy a certain hobby and no longer they're enjoying it. They've kind of almost checked out. There's just a lot of things that are warning signs.
Not wanting to go to family events.
Right.
Giving stuff away.
Right.
Giving stuff away.
Right, and I would say I would rather be a little intrusive in your life than you be alive,
Yes.
than assume wrong.
Imagine if somebody was giving you clues and you didn't pick them up, and you chose to ignore those clues, and then you had to go to their funeral.
Right. So, and that happens a fair amount, but at the same time, we don't want people to feel like they are experts in this or anything, or because they, people aren't trained out there, so stuff happens, so we want to make sure that people don't feel responsible. But, if you've listened to this program now, you have a little bit of a clue.
Right.
Look for warning signs, look for increased alcohol and drugs, look for isolation, sleeping too much, too little, loss of interest in normal things, talking about being a burden to others, saying they're hopeless. These are warning signs that we should take really seriously. And as Michael said, listen non-judgmentally to that, to what's going on,
And get Well, go for it.
I would say, to echo what Larry said, one of the leading things I've seen in research is the warning signs is people feel they're a burden to their family.
Right.
If you feel or hear of somebody that says they're a burden to their family,
And that's the classic, you'd be better off without me.
right, you really need to ask more questions. And then to go also, what Larry said, is don't handle it yourself.
right?
Get some professional help, that professional counselor or the ER room at Henry Mayo, or somewhere where they can get professional help to be assessed on what's next. That's just so important.
And on the campus, there's the Student Health and Wellness Center. In our community, besides the Henry Mayo, we have Santa Clarita Mental Health Center, we have Child and Family Center, we have the Santa Clarita Valley Youth Project. Schools have lots of counselors and psychologists. So there's always somebody you can talk to, and we don't want to keep these things secret. Suicide is not something that's confidential.
Now, for our listeners that's sitting there saying, why are you talking about all this suicide stuff? Well, as we said at the beginning of the program, September is National Suicide Prevention Month. So that's what we're all about today, is prevention. And Larry, along those lines, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that College of the Canyons has is the first aid, mental health first aid, which is a really excellent. You do that for free sometimes.
We
right?
do. We teach mental health first aid. It's an 8-hour course where you can learn, about different kinds of mental illnesses and situations, from all the way from, major depression to post-traumatic stress and
how would they get hooked up with
disorders.
that? They call
if they're interested in that, they can call the Student Health and Wellness Center and ask about it, or email Gail Freund. So that's GAYLE.FREUND at canyons.edu. We just did one last week, and so we're going to do another one next month for the public. We do a lot of private ones for different departments and that sort of thing, but if you're interested in that, you can also go on the Canyon College of the Canyons website, and you'll see our mental health first aid there.
You brought something with you. I see you have that card in your hand. I know exactly what that is. We actually mentioned the suicide hotline last week,
I'm so
Larry,
proud of you, Michael.
And I have to come clean here. I said, Larry's going to get upset with me. I do not have the 800 number. The board operator looked it up, so we saved the day. But you have it right there in your
I bring it with me wherever I go, and I try to give out these cards that have the warning signs. If you want one of these cards, you can, I'm sure there's ways we can get them to you. But the suicide hotline is extremely important.
Let's give that to them a couple
times. The number is
times.
1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. And you can call that number 24/7. 2 in the morning, a friend of yours is feeling suicidal, you can call that number and consult with them. Or if you're feeling suicidal yourself, there's going to be somebody there all the time. They know the local resources. They're experts in talking to people that might have thoughts of suicide.
And also, we have other options here in Santa Clarita too. If there's a crisis 24 hours a day, I want to make sure everybody knows that Henry Mayo's ER, there is somebody that can evaluate you 24 hours a day, or a loved one or a friend of yours.
Yes.
So,
and the great thing about that is, now if somebody comes to the emergency department, and they will be seen both phically and mentally if they have a mental health component.
And if you got somebody that is really that depressed and talking suicide, and you can't get them to go, call the sheriff's station. They can send the crisis team out. Nobody's going to get arrested. It's okay if somebody gets upset with you. You might be saving their life.
And when you say the crisis team, the sheriff actually has a specially trained team that goes out. And so they know what to look for. They know how to handle that. It's actually quite excellent.
Right. It's called the MET team, so the mental evaluation team. So they'll send that team out if it's a dicey situation.
And we always better safe than sorry.
Right.
Yeah, and it's better. It's like you say, it's better to do something than nothing, and then be sorry that you didn't do something.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've tried to study is what is the reasons why these people don't reach out for help, that may be feeling that, and we've come up with like 5 things, and the research shows that one of them is, I just don't think I have the time. Others, I don't know where the counseling center is, or their friend that they talk to doesn't know the resources. Also, there's they may feel my problem's not big enough. It's to get counseling, or there's a stigma to getting counseling. There's a stigma to having a mental health crisis. So these kinds of things we want to really address, because the stigma can really get in the way, and feeling like your problem's not bad enough to get some help is another one.
Well, I just hear the shame is one of those themes of, it's not like so-and-so, they have a lot of problems. Why? They almost feel embarrassed that they feel that depressed with their circumstances.
And Dan, Grace Baptist Church has a huge amount of wonderful counseling programs, and they don't have to be a member of the church or any church to take part in that. Right?
Yeah, we have a number of people you can meet with one-on-one, or a number of groups, and there's no condition that they be part of the church, or
and they'll
that
be welcomed.
Yep, absolutely. And we just want to be there to serve the community.
And it's completely confidential. So that shame doesn't have to be there. Nobody's going to know.
Right, and we just want to be able to care for people because sometimes people just need to be heard and understood. Because a lot of times they'll say, my family doesn't understand me, or they don't have family in the area. I was talking to a social worker who said recently some people who've been coming to the ER room just for connections.
Right.
Just because they don't have anybody in the area that they can talk to. And that just shows the level of loneliness that people feel, or the lack of connection that people have in their lives.
Well, we need that human contact.
Yes.
We do.
Right.
And as I began at the top of the program here, when we were talking about suicide rates in the U.S. have skyrocketed. So that means there are a whole lot of people out there that are very confused, very upset. They're feeling lonely. They don't know where to turn, and they're thinking about suicide. This is a very, very big deal. Why don't you give that suicide hotline?
And before you give it, I encourage people to put it in their cell phone.
Yes.
I think it's a good thing. Just put it in their cell number, in their cell phone. And so hopefully you never have to use it, but if you do, it's available.
Now, you know,
Right.
I got to say, Larry has a great gimmick over there at the College of the Canyons, and I bet every single student over there has it in their cell phone because Larry tells them if you put it in your cell phone, you get a slice of pizza when we're
Right.
doing those. By the way, I think there
Right.
may be people showing up asking you for a slice of pizza at
That's
any
right.
time.
That's fine. If they can show me their cell phone that has this number in it, they get pizza. You know.
That's a pretty
And
good
so
deal.
we're trying to get every staff, every faculty, every student on our campus to have this number in their cell phone, and we want the entire community, everybody in the community, to have this cell phone.
And
so
we can all come get pizza.
when I talk, well, I don't know about that.
I got to tell you, Cary, you and I both know they have some
That's
seriously
right.
good pizza
I'm
over there.
on
They
my
really
way.
do.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So the number again is 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. We know that suicide is preventable, and if you make that call, the chances are we're going to prevent a suicide.
And talking about it with someone is not going to cause them to commit suicide.
Exactly.
Yep.
That is a myth. Get over it.
No, but it probably will cause them to not.
Yeah.
Right.
You save somebody.
Save a life.
You
Right.
save a life. You've got to listen non-judgmentally,
Exactly.
and you don't swear to secrecy. You can't do that. You have to. You
Right.
cannot do that. And if you need to, you can pick up the phone. You can get anybody. I mean, if you have to, call the sheriff. If you have a pastor, call the pastor. Otherwise, you can call Grace Baptist. They'll talk to you happily. You don't have to be a member of the church. Larry over at COC. Anybody, call anybody.
The ER, just don't try to handle it by yourself.
Henry Mayo Newhall Hospital is there for you.
Always.
Right. I mean,
24/7.
365 days.
You got it.
I think it's a really good point that you make with the confidentiality, because especially high school and junior high school students, they say, well, I'm thinking of killing myself, but don't tell anybody. And so we really want to, and I think our high school students out here are exceptionally good at this, but not always. So you might, as a parent, those parents out there, you might hear this from your son or daughter. Hey, Johnny told me that he's thinking of killing himself. And you might be the only one that hears about it. And so if your son or daughter comes to you saying, hey, their friend said this, then that's your cue to call the school. Not necessarily, you could call their parent, but call somebody that might be able to manage that situation, because your son or daughter, you want to encourage them to not be alone with that information.
And the good thing about that, a trained professional will meet with that child and,
Right.
and
Yes.
determine what. And I tell you, most of the time, if we look at somebody that's suicidal and say, "Are you suicidal?" they'll say yes.
They'll tell you.
Yeah, they'll be
They'll
honest.
tell you. They'll be honest.
Or they'll say, hey, I've had thoughts of it, and we know that students and people in general that have had thoughts of suicide, and they have witnessed it, or they have a friend or a family member that have taken their life, they're at higher risk. Or if they've attempted it themselves, they're a higher risk. So there's lots of risk factors. We know that men take their life more than women, but women attempt it more.
Right.
So we know all the risk factors, and if they hit all the buttons, then yeah, that's when they're over there. That's who you see in the behavioral health unit.
And some people aren't going to say, I'm thinking about committing suicide. Some people are going to put it a little differently. They're going to say, I'm thinking about hurting myself.
Right. And hurting yourself is not the same as killing yourself. We know there's such things as non-suicidal self-injury, where people cut themselves or they burn themselves. They're not intending to take their life. but they could do something that actually ends up taking their life. So they're treated differently. Killing yourself and hurting yourself are two different things, but
take it serious.
But it's a cue for you to ask some more questions.
When somebody's trying to cut themselves or burn themselves, they're actually saying something.
Right.
They're saying they're hurting.
They're in anguish somehow.
They're trying to control the emotional pain is what's going on.
Yep.
Right.
So, Dan, Larry, again, thanks. What great information. And I believe these shows and you guys were saving lives out there by giving information. We have to close, but before we close, I want that suicide number read again.
Here we go.
And Dan,
your turn,
Larry,
Dan.
Any closing thoughts? And we're done.
Phone number 1-800-273-8255. And also, just want to say, if there's someone listening who has these thoughts currently, to ask for help.
Yeah.
Reach out to somebody who cares about you, something, the hotline, someone at like COC or Henry Mayo, someone to ask for help, because it's worth it.
Suicide is a permanent solution to whatever's going on.
Right.
Well, Cary, knowledge is power, and did we ever give out a lot of knowledge today?
We did,
There's
Michael.
some people that
We
have
did.
this power. It's like put that Powerball in your pocket. Remember
That's
it.
exactly right, but it's time to close.
It is.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, guys. This is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Have a great day.